Lives Matter activist Marshawn McCarroll. On February 8th, he shot himself to death at the entrance to the Ohio State House in Columbus, Ohio. He was just 23 years old. Marshawn organized against the police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson and worked to aid the homeless. He launched the program Feed the Streets after he himself was homeless for 3 months.
Hours before he shot himself, Marshawn wrote on his Facebook page, "My demons won today. I'm sorry." Just before his death, Marshawn was honored as a hometown hero at the NAACP Image Awards for his community project Pursuing Our Dreams. When I was in Ohio yesterday in Columbus, I spoke to a group of high school students and their teacher who knew Marshawn well. Steve Shapiro is the program director for Mosaic, a high school humanities program that draws students from across Columbus, Ohio.
Mosaic is a high school humanities program for creative young people from across Franklin County. And Marshawn was not only an amazing kid as a student, but he came back many years as a guest speaker for us. He spoke not only about activism and about strategies for making social change, but he also spoke about white privilege and about racial questions. And he was a brilliant guy and someone that our kids fell in love with every time they saw him.
Mm-hmm. And you're the head of the program?
Program director.
Mm-hmm. How did you meet Marshawn?
Like we meet all of our students, going out and recruiting and sharing information about this program. And I think Marshawn saw, as a creative and a socially conscious young man, saw this as a really unique opportunity, but also recognized himself as being not like many of the other kids who came from privileged suburbs. And I think he wondered, is this the right place for me? Am I outside of my comfort zone? And I think it was an act of courage for him to choose to come to Mosaic because, you know, as he said, you know, I'm one of the homies here, but there are many, you know, and he stood out, and it was a risk, but he found very quickly that he was in a culture of people who really valued and cared about him.
He started a program with his brother?
Yeah, Marshawn and his brother, his twin brother Marquand, started the program called Feed the Streets, which is basically a program on the west side in the bottoms, near where they came up. And basically it was a program where they were feeding people in their community, but it wasn't a community service, it wasn't a charity act, it was basically a building community act. Marshawn always believed you have to build community to move community. And so what he and his brother did was organized people, usually as many as 40, 50 people would show up once a month to just pass out lunches, not so much as an act of charity, but as an act of connecting with neighbors. People would go door to door, people would say hello to people would just sort of build a positive relationship between strangers in the community to make the notion that people can be safe, that people can be together, and that people of all different types of people are welcome in the bottoms.
It must have come as a terrible shock to you. How did you hear that Marshawn had died?
I mean, of course, on Facebook, like, you hear everything. It's the first time I saw it, and I think I was really in a pretty deep state of denial the night that it happened, and I thought maybe it's a mistake, maybe it was misreported.
What did he say on his Facebook page?
Well, on his Facebook page, he said, "My demons won today, I'm sorry," which was ominous, but you know, it was just the reality of it. The reason it was so shocking to me is Marshawn was full of life. He had a bright smile, flash in his eyes. Everyone loved him. He could light up a room, and he always seemed to be positive and working. You know, he was a young man that could see all the oppression and injustice, commit himself to working for it, and still just bring light and life. Like, so he wasn't, even if he was angry at the system, he managed to somehow bring positive energy to the work that he did. He was remarkable.
Can you tell me your name and how you knew Marshawn?
I'm Jacob. I learned about Marshawn through the Mosaic program.
Are you in it?
Yes, I am. I'm a senior. It's a 2-year program, and this is my second year of it.
A senior in high school?
Mm-hmm, yes.
How did you know Marshawn?
Well, Marshawn had come in multiple times to talk to the Mosaic program about the importance of activism and the importance of kind of getting out in your community. And I kind of learned about him through that. And he personally, at least for me, inspired me to be an activist. You know, I've held personally rallies at local Planned Parenthoods for, you know, against like anti-choice groups. And he just inspired me to really go out and kind of help my community. One of my favorite quotes, he said he always wished he had a gun that shot hope because he would light up the hood, which I just think is like epitomizes him for me.
There was an unfortunate incident after he died with a police officer. Can you explain what happened?
Well, yeah, a police officer, I believe it was near Dayton, reposted an article that he found about Marshawn, and with the comment, "You gotta love a happy ending," which just set a lot of people off, and it was just really upsetting to see law enforcement treat someone who was so afraid of law enforcement because of where he grew up. And, he grew up in the west side of Columbus, which has been notorious for, not very good treatment of people by the police. And so I think that it was really sad for a lot of people to see mistreatment like that.
The police officer wrote, "You gotta love a happy ending," after Marshawn had committed suicide.
Yes. He reposted one of the articles on Facebook that was talking about Marshawn, who had committed suicide on the State House steps.
What happened to him?
He was put on paid leave because I would like to think that if he wasn't unionized, there would have been stricter actions, but he was put on paid leave by the police department of that city.
Mm-hmm. Have there been protests?
There have not. I think Marshawn's family is asking people to kind of focus on how he lived his life rather than how he died. So.
Can you tell me your name and how you knew Marshawn?
I'm Marshawn. I'm a senior in Mosaic, and I knew him from him coming in and speaking to us multiple times and going after class and speaking to him one-on-one and actually going to one of his Feed the Streets events and going and passing out food to people.
What is Feed the Streets, the program he started with his twin brother?
Well, basically, it's a program that once a month people come together and they have brown paper bags filled with sandwiches, water, snacks, and they go around and in the west side and just offer people a meal. And if people decline it, we let them be, and if they accept it, we give it to them. And one of the things that Marshawn would say before I went out there that really spoke to me was, the hood doesn't need heroes, they need neighbors. And so he would always talk about how we're not above these people. We're not their saviors. We're not like better than them. We're just here trying to build a community. That's what we're trying to do. We're supposed to come together as one. And I think I've tried to do many charity events, and nothing that I've gone to has been anything like that in what Marshawn had said.
Marshawn was being honored by the NAACP as a hometown hero.
Yeah, in fact, just days before Marshawn's passing, he was in Los Angeles to be recognized as a hometown hero. And so, again, that was part of the surprise of the whole thing, is his work was so impactful. He was making such a difference. He was being recognized. But I think Marshawn just cared so much that I don't know if it was anything he could do was ever enough to solve the things that were so important to him.
And what's your name, and are you part of the high school program?
I'm Cassidy, yeah. I'm a first-year student in Mosaic.
Mm-hmm. And how did you know Marshawn?
Like they said, Marshawn came in and he would talk to us about privileges, white privilege, male privilege. And I think he taught me more about privilege than anyone I've ever met. I met him originally at a Black Trans Lives Matter protest, and he spoke there, but only after he'd been asked. And then later, when I met him in Mosaic, he was speaking on privilege, and he said, "Show up and shut up." And that was like a main thing. Everyone in Mosaic talks about it now, that you show up to these things and you're a number and you're there and you're part of the movement, but if it's not your place, you don't speak on it. You speak to people of your privilege, but you don't speak to people who are running the movement because they're the leaders of the movement, you know what I mean? And I think that was like a main thing that I really have held on to. I've been protesting more lately, and I think things like Feed the Streets, Chloe and I went to Feed the Streets, and it was just amazing to see what he did for our community, the people that he helped, everyone who remembered him. He had such an impact on everyone who met him.
My name's Chloe Chalicombe.
And how'd you know Marshawn?
I first met Marshawn when he came into a white privilege panel to speak at a Mosaic event for class.
And what did he teach you?
Well, he told this story about that really opened my eyes to white privilege. He talked about how he was at a football game one night, and it was really relatable. I remember like running around football games myself, but he talked about how he was causing some trouble, and a police officer pulled him aside, and he kind of called him out on it, and then he drove him home, and he had to tell his mom, and his mom just started crying. Like, she wasn't mad at him or anything. She was just crying and sobbing, and she said to him, "Son, these white people will kill you." And that was something that just really resonated with the group, and like people are still repeating it to this day, and like I can just hear it. Like, I can just hear it in his voice, and it was just like it silenced the room.
Tell me your name.
Jess. I'm a junior in high school with the Mosaic program.
How old are you?
17.
And when did you meet Marshawn?
I met Marshawn at our first privilege panel in our very first project, which was white privilege And he spoke about everything he had been through, just as Chloe had mentioned. And what really struck me was at the very end, I had gone up to him to talk to him about being white passing because I am biracial, and how I never really went to Black Lives Matter events because I felt as if I didn't belong there. I wasn't valid in my identity, that people would look at me weird and just think, oh, why is this white girl here? And my favorite memory is just how he looked me in the eye and he was still like grinning ear to ear, and he said, "You're just as valid as me. It doesn't matter about the color of your skin." And to have someone say that to me for the first time in my life, it meant a lot to me.
And what about this issue of Marshawn's suicide? How are you dealing with this? All of you knew him. He went through your program. He was your age. Can you talk about his death, the steps of the State House in Columbus, Ohio? Maybe I'll turn to the teacher, Steve Shapiro.
Obviously, choosing the steps of the State House was a political statement, but I think most people are remembering Marshawn for what he did and what his work was. And in all of the memorials afterwards, everyone's commitment was to carry on Marshawn's work, to take what he was passionate about and what he was committed to, and each of us rededicate ourselves to creating a more just, a more fair, a more equitable world. And so I think that's what we've all taken, is how do we live Marshawn's passions in his absence.